Well, some people are alarmed by ongoing logging activity on private property along Lake Monroe. Pictures are circulating on social media that show large areas of trees cleared from a peninsula near the Shores subdivision. But as Barbara Brozier reports, it's perfectly legal.
People who live on South Shadyside Drive on the banks of Lake Monroe say their quiet neighborhood is anything but lately. They say they've routinely seen large logging trucks come from Joe Huff's property, which is at the center of an ongoing controversy over private property rights and environmental concerns.
There is some concern that this is really a development that is being disguised as logging. And that's a concern because we want people to go through the appropriate channels and have respect for the regulations that protect the lake.
Sherry Mitchell Brooker is president of Friends of Lake Monroe, which has been doing water clarity monitoring near the Huff property for about 2 years. The group worries about sediment runoff that could be coming from the site, where crews are cutting down large sections of trees.
That sediment carries with it nutrients, and those nutrients feed algae. And algae is one of the problems that we have on the lake, especially blue-green algae, which is toxic at certain levels.
Although Huff and the company he hired to harvest timber on his nearly 250-acre property applied for logging permits with Monroe County, the planning department never granted them. Huff's attorney says the logging activity is still legal.
In the area that Mr. Huff has had logs cut to be removed, it's all outside the urban area, so it doesn't require a logging permit.
State law only allows counties to regulate natural resource development on private land in what's called an urban area. That means anywhere where there are at least 8 residences within a quarter square mile. The controversy is also at the center of a court battle between Huff and some neighbors. They're suing him because they say he's using easements for commercial logging activity, which isn't allowed under a use of easement agreement. Last year, a Monroe County judge granted a preliminary injunction halting logging on the property, which Malapit says cost his client time and money.
There was over 800 logs that are cut and were sitting ready to be harvested and hauled away. And when you cut logs like that, if they're not stored in water, then they deteriorate, and there's all kinds of damage as a result.
The Indiana Court of Appeals ruled differently last month and lifted the injunction, allowing logging to continue on Huff's property. And that has neighbors and advocates worried.
There are people who have private property, who have certain property rights, and we understand that. And what we would like to see is that at least, at the minimum, that they go through a permitting process that ensures that they use the best management practices and do everything they can to limit the impact on the lake.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Barbara Brozier.
Now, landowners cannot log past what's called a take line, which is where the property is owned by the federal government. That's established by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and can vary depending on where the property is. The Army Corps says it sent a surveyor out to the Huff property multiple times, and the logging hasn't violated their boundaries. But Monroe County's planning director says the logging is far greater in scope than outlined in the initial permits, and few DNR forestry best management practices are being followed.